The meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
We're recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Compassionate Citizen on the World of Ability Podcast Network. That's powered by and made possible by Transform You Media. I am Emily, one of the hosts today, along with Kurt Roskopf. And our topic of discussion today is all about compassion and about compassion being cultivated in faith communities, service life, lifelong learning, politics, work, pleasure, excellent. The Compassionate Citizens Project was born out of faith communities with a common goal to bring compassion more into political practice. So today we have Marc Morrison and Larry Lall. So like just would Larry like to introduce yourself and then Mark, and then we can get talk about compassion.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, or Larry, whichever one wants to go first.
Mark, after you.
Okay. Well, I think, Larry, you asked about what the agenda was as far as compassionate. Okay. A compassionate citizen can be any type of someone who gives out kindness, regards people with kindness and more than toleration, and also to be loving towards their family, friends, whatever else, mind you. This is a being compassionate to those citizens of our country that need to have people be compassionate to them, despite the fact that they may or may not be totally like the normal population. Okay, and that means anybody who is classified as disabled. And it has to do with employment. It has to do with activities. It has to do with whatever else you might want to speak about. So far, Emily is not correcting me, so I think I'm on the right path. And, you know, the work that Kurt and Emily do go way far beyond this, but they offer this as an opportunity for everybody to come on board and give us their own definition of compassionate and a compassionate citizen. And that means anyone who is not technically or categorized as disabled as opposed to those who are. So that's basically what it's all about. So that should answer your question. So I guess if you do have anything to, any words of wisdom now, I guess it's your turn.
Well, I think it's really interesting, the whole issue of compassion, because really when you think about compassion, it's about pity or being sympathetic, or having concern for someone else's suffering or misfortune, right? But you can't feel that, in my opinion, if you don't have empathy. So to me, compassion is great to be, you know, to have that pity and to have that concern and to have that sympathy for the situation that someone is in. But if you can't relate to it and you can't have empathy of the situation they're in, then the compassion doesn't drive you to do anything. So I would like to suggest that if you do have the compassion, it needs to come with empathy, and it needs to also come with a logical piece where all three of those things are in balance to be able to drive a decision-making process for the benefit of the people who are in those communities that we need to have compassion and empathy for. So how is that for an opening statement on my part?
That is a good opening statement. Questions come to my mind. Number one, you mentioned and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will, you were talking about a perfect mix, or as perfect a mix as possible, of empathy with everything before that, or inclusive. Okay, so how does a human being have that perfect mix?
So here's the thing. It all stems back from the experiences that they've had in their lifetime. People who were empathetic towards them, people who were compassionate towards them, is what they will pay back in return, either consciously, subconsciously, or unconsciously. They will pay it back. Now, to break that cycle, the one part is the logic that I spoke about earlier. And let me just go back and reiterate. In order to make a great decision, in my opinion, it's about a nice balance between and amongst the logic of the situation, the compassion of the situation, and the empathy of the situation. So when you're speaking about people who are, in the disabled community, we, as people who are not in the disabled community, need to be able to put ourselves in their shoes so that we can generate the empathy for them and make the logical decision as to what is the right thing to do on their behalf and for them. So the balance amongst the logic, the empathy, and the compassion is how we come out with great decisions to help people. If you're unbalanced, or one is more dominant than another, in my opinion, you have a very skewed decision, which means if it's imbalanced, it's disservicing someone. To have it in balance between the logic and the compassion and the empathy is a solid decision that's made so that everybody can benefit. So as to make no one worse off. So that's just my perspective on that one.
Okay.
And we have,
Okay, good.
if Kurt joined us. Hi, Kurt.
Hello, Kurt.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Kurt.
Hello, Larry.
Nice to see you again.
This could
Always
be
good to see you.
this can be the Three Stooges if I ever want to attend this.
There you go.
So, Kurt, what were your thoughts about Larry? What Larry was talking about?
Well, I'm sitting here watching this show and I'm like, wow, this Larry Lall, he's got quite a podcast going here. It's like we have the founder of the Compassionate Citizens podcast on today. So this is good.
Why, thank you very much, Kurt. You're flattering me to no end. So thank you.
Yeah. So I guess it's one way to say it seems like Larry found his place in here, we're in his wheelhouse. So this is all good. So I can just segue a little bit with that and just kind of set the stage here that the Compassionate Citizens podcast was inspired through a gentleman out of Chicago, Illinois. His name is Norland Dimmitt. So this is a culmination to the point that he inspired this. He doesn't claim this is his production, but my learning about his work inspired me to say that with what I'm doing with podcasting, I thought I'd be remiss if we didn't have such a podcast like this, like we do. And it opened up a collaboration with Emily's boss, as we say, Dr. B now, Dr. Bliven, Anna Maria Bliven from Onward and Upward and Prosperity Pathways, and also Dariush Ashtari from Armenia. We all collaborated and got this podcasting going, and Dariush has his own show called The Tech Show with Dariush. But the Compassionate Citizens Project is a project that is conducted through the faith community, and it's largely a USA initiative. because of USA politics. So if we want to look at that, so that's kind of where this faith organization thought that that's what USA politics needs is, something that can fuel compassion into the citizens, and to look at how we celebrate compassion that citizens have. Because when we kind of veer away from what we want to see, in narratives and exchanges, and what we see on our television sets, and the negativity that's put out there, to look at, what can we do to reframe what we're experiencing as citizens of a nation. And so a tremendous group of people that bring this forth, that the key is compassion. So we're here with #compassion, and saying compassion goes a long way. And in the work that I do, it comes from the intention to share what can be done as change makers, and to open up that dialogue. So I want to learn from other people on how other individuals, the idea that it only takes one, the power of one, right? And what we can do. And if we move things forward, and we share our message and our intent, and we invite people in to be a part of being difference makers. And, we're connected here through the great works of the Happy Neighborhood Project. And our Chief Happiness Officer, Edwin Atterbury, brings forward the great collaboration that culminated out of 2021, coming in to unveil a theme of the year, imagination. And he creates some tie-ins to the Disney dynasty and the work of Walt Disney, where he makes possible Imagineering. And so it's a whole field out there, Imagineering. And so that's where my thoughts come in, is that with what you said, Larry, and Mark, you're part of this conversation, is that's what this is about, is imagining beloved communities where compassion is practiced by all. It becomes that commonality. And we get this deep-rooted, deep-seated, that it redirects genetic memory. Because that's what I believe happens in human evolution. So there's genetic memory. And some of what we do comes from our DNA, our makeup. And so we have the possibility to inject this energy of compassion into our DNA makeup, that as our cells replicate, and as this whole idea of reproduction out there around the world, and that we can form a rejuvenation of humankind, where we are evolving into everyone on planet Earth being compassionate. And this imagination from as far back as anthropology can take us, about peace on earth. And that when you really get around to it, people live and die like we can't achieve total peace on earth. And so I subscribe to the Compassionate Citizens Project to say, yes, compassion is the key. So thanks for letting me build off what you said, Larry, and thanks for everything you do here, Mark, coming as a regular conductor of our podcast, the Compassionate Citizens Podcast. It seems to be your favorite, Mark, because we do a lot of podcasts, and you're regularly showing up on Compassionate Citizens. So, Mark, tell us more. Why is Compassionate Citizens your favorite podcast as compared to all the others? It might just be your schedule, but I got a feeling like there's something about this that you love. What is it, Mark?
Well, a very small part of it is admittedly my schedule, but I have to say that I leave time for it. Okay, and that's important. I put time away for it. And I'm not into politics, and that's what this all can happen. You know that already, Kurt. Larry, I want Kurt not to become institutionalized by the government of the United States, because he will be drowned. His message will be drowned in money and politics and a form and policy. And so he needs to keep doing this. So he needs to stay away. And considering the fact that people, my relatives, my paternal grandmother, and all the people in her family that are women, they've each had a handicap, a disability that they could not make it in the world. Okay. And that transferred it down to my father and transferred it down to me. So I, in my non-disability classification, I have a 20% or more hearing loss in both ears. Now, that doesn't stop me from, wearing a headset or sitting in the back of the room if I don't want to be bothered running up front every time. So you were talking about empathy. Empathy, part of it says, I'm included in this group, but I'm not signed up with it. And I've never done the ADA. I've been on the other side of the table. Okay, I've been the counselor for 46 years going on. Okay, and I've had people who were quote unquote disabled and those that were not. And I probably had to work harder mechanically for those that aren't disabled. Okay, because they can't, some of them, we had someone, Kurt, on the Wisconsin thing this morning. Her name is Denise. And all she showed was her phone number because she said, well, I'm sorry, I apologize for not appearing, but I am disabled and I cannot hold up the phone to my ear and talk to you at the same time. So I cannot appear before you. She apologized for having a disability, but she was apologizing out of her generosity and her regret of not being able to see her, which to me was very rewarding for her, but it left us thinking like, okay, who are you, Denise? And we would like to see you, but maybe that will happen one day, who knows? They were going to, she would love to take a cruise ship, but she said she could not go. Why? Because there was no cruise ship in existence, because she can't get out of her chair or out of her conveyance to put herself in bed and then to get out of it. And God forbid there should be a happening out there in the ocean or whatever. We would lose Denise because they would not have time to go out and get her. And I told her before we got cut out of that first round, it's not your fault, Kurt. We didn't have time. We didn't do it very well. She has a right under the ADA to bring an attendant with her to take care of her, to help her. This is how we even it out. Okay, logistically. Empathy-wise, we didn't get to meet Denise. So we didn't have that. So that's another reason I'm here. If Kurt, maybe you can convey it to her somehow that she has that right under the ADA, you would know these things. If not, then let Emily do it. So that's another reason. And it's all become politicized even now, even after 30, 31 years, whatever. It's still politicized, but the money is still there. So get that out there and let people know. My thing, as Kurt knows, is to employ them as part of my team and let them earn their own money. Okay, and I would train them and I would help them along. And they don't have to worry about their benefits because they were never needed. But I know that's a hill that we have to climb because a lot of them are afraid they're going to lose their only income, which is the benefits, because it's not going to be immediate money. Okay, so that's another story. But those are all the reasons that I'm here. And Denise just reminded me of those reasons. And if she could take a trip, what's his name? Who was the travel agent? Kurt, what's his name? Bernie, what's his name? I forgot his name. I don't know.
I'm blanking on it myself with Dream Cruises.
Yeah.
He actually was telling me he's writing me in.
Edward
Edward
Cincinnati.
There we go.
Thank you, Emily. That's why Emily is so indispensable.
There we go.
So, but I told that to Denise and Edward, whatever, And it may have been lost because we got sent back to the main room. So I'm sure that either Emily and or Kurt will remind her that's what she can have the right to do if she wants to go. So those are my reasons for being on this.
Excellent stuff. So Larry, what by chance, if anything, do you know about AODA, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act? Do you know anything about that?
I know a little bit, but probably not enough.
Okay. Well, that's something that is meaningful to me because in the U.S. with the Americans with Disabilities Act, back in 1990 when that passed, I kind of benefited as an American with all of the education they provided. That was the year I graduated high school. Then I moved on to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for college. And that's where, as a nation here in the US, we were learning a lot about an issue that a ginormous population that includes me were unaware of how we were devastating to our fellow Americans, our Americans with disabilities. And so that's something where even after that point, I didn't really do that much about it. It was almost like newsy and just, trying to do your citizen thing and kind of get a clue type of thing. But I've been involved with the water ski team, and this team had already for a couple of years been taking adults with disabilities water skiing. And so that was one of the things that I celebrated to do with the disability community. But it wasn't until like 8 years ago that I really got jacked up about the idea that for me, like being on the Compassionate Citizens podcast, I thought, you know what, I could be even more compassionate to say, like, I've been enjoying this sport for decades. And how much have I really been doing to allow others to enjoy the sport that I enjoy? So that's where my family and I got organized, and we set out to spread access for Wisconsinites here in the U.S., but in our state of Wisconsin, our Wisconsinites with disabilities, and really told them that we were out there to get them water skiing. And we ended up with like 100 people joining us. And then loosely, it ended up translating to a couple thousand people through the Wisconsin Water Ski Federation hopped on board, that it became a thing. Like, it's institutionalized here in Wisconsin now that everybody skis. And so I can appreciate this thing of, how we just move on the trajectory of our life and we're not really involved in things that other people around us are involved in, and so like we're talking about a Denise out of Madison, or I'm not going to say Madison. I just know what the area code, it's roughly South Central Wisconsin from the area code this Denise called in on. But we know another Denise Vargas from Long Island. And she created what's called the Worldwide Inclusion Network. And so we're going to do a speaking series, and we have Trevor Gibbs is going to be speaking at the end of this month on the 28th, or not the 28th, that'd be the 27th. He's going to be speaking at our Zoom event, and he's going to be sharing about web content accessibility guidelines. And then Denise Vargas is going to be presenting in February. And then Emily here is going to be presenting in March. So Larry and Mark, I'm really going to be on your case. If you are not, even if you missed the event at the time, we're going to have to figure something out that both of you see Emily's presentation one way or another from March. And then I'm going to present in April. And then we've got Brenda Sheldrake. Larry, you know Brenda, right?
Oh, I know Brenda. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and we're joining together to recruit, some people to help us from Ontario on this Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, because both in May and October, there are milestones. So May was the commitment milestone, where legislatively you Ontarians were promised such an act. And then at a later date, a later point in time, there was a milestone of it being passed. And October is the anniversary for the AODA, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So to make these things possible, it takes a lot of compassionate citizens to make that possible, because these things represent the will of the citizens. So, and Larry, I can only trust that when we're talking about that, from what you said, I'm taking a guess that you would be an inherent supporter of the fact that Ontario accomplished that.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me just take you back maybe, what is it? Maybe 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. I remember when I was involved, I was heavily involved in playing sports and volleyball. And I remember John, one of the guys, came out to practice one night, and he actually had a disability. He had lost a leg. I don't know how or what, it was not my place to ask, but he got us involved. I mean, not only myself, but a group of us involved in supporting his disabled team. Not to mention all of the canvassing as well as the lobbying that needed to be done with the politicians and some of the other people to bring awareness to the fact that these guys, this community existed. And this community is not necessarily treated the same way as the rest of the communities. So it opened my eyes very, very early on when I was younger that this type of situation existed, and all the much so that it has led over time to I would think almost every building in the city of Toronto, it is actually wheelchair accessible, one way or another. All ramps, all elevators, all bathrooms, washrooms, all that kind of stuff. Okay, but that doesn't just happen at the drop of a hat. That doesn't just happen because somebody says so. It happens because of a large number of people deciding that this is the right thing to do, and then having the drive to be able to get it legislated, but more so to have the companies and the the large players embrace the philosophy of having everyone be accessible. Now, over the years, what I realized was that because of legislations that were introduced, there were many people with disabilities who were given special, well, I wouldn't say special, they were given accommodations because, maybe they were hearing impaired, maybe they were sight visually impaired, maybe, they had issues with getting to and from the office, whatever. And there were things put in place to be able to accommodate these folks so that they could be a normal part of our work environment. Now, that happened back in the 80s and the 90s for us. Okay.
Mhm.
So there's been a long history, I think, in Ontario to make this to make this a really important issue of communities that are not disabled but are abled, but they're not abled in the same way that everyone else is, or the majority of people are. They are very capable, they're very able. We just need to give them the opportunity to be able to contribute in the best way that they can with tools they require to be able to contribute. And I think it's been really great to see, as I said, the majority of buildings in our city today is, wheelchair accessible, it's easily accessed, all of these things that, 30, 40 years ago was just like, so what? Who cares? I've seen that gradual change happen. But again, I would say to you, the only reason it changes is because there is a balance amongst the passion, the compassion, the empathy, and the logic in the situation of, these are people who are potentially being missed by our society. And when I say missed, I mean they have amazing contributions to make, but they need to be given the tools to be able to make it, which should not, in my opinion, be a deterrent. It should be, should I say, a right, which would be the stronger way to put it, right?
Mhm.
It should be their right to be able to contribute to the society, and our society needs to be able to provide them with the tools to be able to make that happen. So that would be my perspective.
Yeah, and it's great. I guess the way I've evolved to to look onto this is, in the last decade, I've gone through like a transformation because I've had to shake off some of the stuff that the public and my community and the stuff that's out there that's more what I call the falsely claimed mainstream and the misleading example that comes over our TV sets and in our newspaper and over radio. There's a lot of stuff that's not happening that again is just carryover stuff that we just keep following the tradition, doing the same old, doing it a certain way because that's the way we've always done it. And opportunity is lost by not making a monumental shift. And so this is what I've been trying to harness here. And in my really diving deep, guys, Larry and Mark, it's striking me right now as I'm talking to the two of you that beholden to me is where you two come from regionally. Because in my opinion, in my review of the US history, is that California, in my opinion, in watching, movies and, trying to figure out what I missed out on, like why I wasn't tracking this stuff before, my take on trying to go back in history was that it took California in the USA to move the USA history and to change the narrative and to be more firm and rigid. Because my impression is that the other 49 states, including my state, the state of Wisconsin, I'm going to say 49 states were flimsy, even in the disability advocacy community, even in terms of Americans with disabilities. The way I go back and catch the story is it took people pent up, like I might say, full of piss and vinegar out of California. That's the amazing thing. They traveled thousands of miles, trekked from California to our state's capital. And to me, the way I understand it, it was their tenacity that then rallied the disability advocates and the disability community and really created that hard line. Like, you know what? You clowns had your chances. You've been telling us the same old song and dance. We're talking immediately, folks, immediately now. And we're not budging. Civil disobedience, exemplified. And then kind of from a different approach, a different mantra, I'm enjoying where I'm seeing superiority out of Ontario because you two know that I'm an ambassador with the Disability Channel. So I'm sitting here in Milwaukee, working with Milwaukee radio, and in my purview, I'm not seeing anything on the TV side of mass media. So I'm thinking, a few years ago, like I've got to be the guy to do something which is even better portrayed through the Disability Channel. Like Jay Stoyan already figured it out, but 3 years ago, I didn't know Jay Stoyan. I thought I had to be the guy. And then all of a sudden, February 2021, February 2020, I'm on LinkedIn because I'm preparing for what we provided online on Halloween, October 31st, 2020. And I'm working on an event that is everyone in event. And Jay Stoyan with the Disability Channel out of Ontario says that he'll hop on our Everyone In event and help us get coverage about what we're trying to do as a global ability fest. And so as I look at it, I just found that so amazing that I thought I had to create this platform. Jay Stoyan now has already been working on it for 9 years. For a half a dozen years, Ontario has been putting, their money where their mouth is. The Ontarian government participates in a private-public partnership with Owlware Limited and the Disability Channel, and the Ontarian government creating something called Digital Ventures, which permits Ontarians with disabilities to have an education that is not available anywhere else in the world, folks. And that's why I do what I do, because even across Canada, that's where, Larry, can you give us a little of your perception of the country of Canada? Because as I'm learning more about Ontario, it seems like Ontario is quite a unique territory of Canada. Is that accurate, or am I just biased because I know you guys?
Okay, so historically, Ontario has been the driver of the Canadian economy. The population of the country is distributed between Quebec, usually between Quebec and Ontario, and then the rest of it's kind of spread out over the rest of the country. So the economic engine, the driving forces of most of the things are in Ontario. And of course, the capital city for the country is Ottawa, which is also in Ontario, and the capital of Ontario is Toronto. So where you have in Toronto and in Ontario is a real progressive driving force of people who want to continue the economic engine moving. And I think many years ago, they discovered that, you never know where the next best contribution is going to come from. You don't know if it's the child who is at Jane and Finch, which is one of our rougher neighborhoods in the city of Toronto, or, they're going to come out of Rosedale, which is one of the, more opulent places within the city. But also, you never know if it's going to be the kid who is not an athlete or is going to become this great artist, or someone with a disability who can, in fact, contribute. So I think the province itself has tried to be very advanced and very forward-looking in especially how we run education. We've probably got one of the best education systems in the world in Ontario, and had been for a very, very long time. I don't know if it's still up there in the rankings, but I remember when I was, going to school, university and high school, it was fairly well regarded globally as one of the best educational systems in the world. That having been said, across the country, we have varying degrees of the same kind of things that are happening in Ontario. Probably not as quickly or not as in depth, but I think the heart of the rest of the country is in the right place. In that, when I say that, what I mean, they are looking at how to make the conditions, not just for everyone, better. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. And that is disabilities, non-disabilities. And then, there's one thing I think I would like to say about, disabilities. I think, we have the situation where you can see that someone is disabled. They have an issue, whether they're in a wheelchair or they can't walk, whatever the situation. But I think if you also look at each individual, I think you can say that each individual has a disability to some degree or not. Okay? No one in the entire globe is perfect. So I think it's just a matter of, looking in the mirror and thinking to yourself, okay, so what is it that's holding me back? What is it that I have a disability with? What is it that's limiting me to give me the ability to relate to people who are probably in with probably more disabilities than I have. So I think from that perspective and that compassionate perspective, it's really important people understand that, nobody is perfect. You may walk with a limp, or you may have, a lazy eye or whatever. You may not consider it a disability, but in truth and in fact, it is. So let's be empathetic to those people around us and help those people around us who have these more disabilities than you have, because you never know what their contribution might be to you or to the rest of the world, for that matter. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and give them the ability to do this. And I would like to think that that's the kind of mentality and perspective that the governments across Canada have. Because I have to tell you, I think no matter where I've gone in the last little while, prior to COVID, accessibility has been probably one of the biggest issues across this country. And not only physical accessibility, but accessibility to education, accessibility to training, accessibility to all of the resources that are available cannot be denied anyone based on whether it be race or creed or ability, disability, or anything like that. So we need to make these things more accessible. And I hope that that's the philosophy that our governments across this country are actually using, because we have seen an improvement in the accessibility for people with disabilities across Canada. Some provinces a little bit faster and a little bit better equipped than others, but it has been better, and it gets better and better every year. So that's just my perspective, Kurt. I'm sure that people within the disability community may have a totally different perspective, but that's been my perspective over the last 10 to 15 years here in Canada.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, you brought out some points that, kind of in a different blend of words. I've aimed to communicate some of the points you made, because the disability community taught me some of the points that you made, and, got me that concept of 7.8 billion people around the world actually have a disability. So I've kind of reformulated and said, the disability aspect really was created for political purposes and government agency work, because you can't kind of sort of qualify for a benefit. Either you qualify for the benefit. Government's got to know, are we putting the money to this or not?
Yeah.
So it's a binary. And that's where it comes from.
I just had this really crazy graphic in my head, right? Okay, so how do you do this? How do you sift? It's, like the old sieves, that you sift flour through. It's like, how do you separate all the people with or without? And how do you categorize it versus how do you don't? How do you do that?
My perspective, Larry, is that I believe that is more a benefit to us that are not
who are disabled. I agree.
Yeah, the people who aren't disabled are getting the benefit that the government is stepping in and doing what we're not doing.
Correct.
So that to me is what it amounts to. It amounts to a functional examination to say, basically, who have we messed up with that we're not supporting them outside of government capacity enough, that government needs to step in and make something equitable here. Because our capitalistic society, our free enterprise system, our global marketplace, everything going on is leaving this person in a systemic oppressed circumstance. And so we need to have something where people can go to government agency and say, hey, can you kind of help me out here? The marketplace isn't really working out for me. What are you guys going to do? And we're saying, you know what? You're right. We have messed up with you. So we have some of our money is going to help you because we haven't figured out any other way to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Mark, what are your thoughts here as you're listening to Larry and we're hearing a little narrative about Canada and some things that can take a global perspective? And I made some remarks about California. Where are you at on all this opinion formation here, Mark? What's your opinion?
California used to be the champion of equality, of equal justice across state lines, and everybody came to California. Different sections of the people went on a mission to actually gain equal rights to education, to employment, and even to the point of taking over colleges and universities. That's probably where I came from when they were doing that. That was being done in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. And the 90s, it kind of got political and it got politicized in California. Even California died in that respect. As a state, civil rights were not there anymore because people had to fight harder to get it. And I thought that was the wrong thing. What is good though is that the ADA kind of equaled it out, Kurt. It gave them governmental permission to give this one section of the population the ability to improve their lives. Okay, then when it became institutionalized, they were afraid that they would lose that money because they gave some of this a benefit as a handout. And they told you, now that you have this, you cannot work. Because if you earn too much money, we have to take this away from you. And then that fueled the fear in those people. Well, what if I make so much money? What if I have a job? Why can't I improve myself? What are you going to take away from me and not let me go further in my life? Okay, so different things happened in California, and the political fervor died. And because I come from that era, and I don't know. Now I think with the resurgence of the ADA, with the resurgence of a threatened legal action, okay, and the onus that it puts on people to having to change for a select group of people, why am I being penalized? Okay, I don't want to put anything sad or objectionable on all the nice things that Larry was saying, because Canada is a different country and they are in favor of treating everybody as equally as possible and giving them the opportunity to make it in their lives, whereas we are not anymore. Despite the fact that people like you and Emily and all other people are now joining the fight to give those people a chance. I think what we're going to need to do, though, is, and I say we because I'm presuming that even though Larry is in Canada, he is going to help because he is aware of this. He is here. So I think that if we could tell them that they do not have to rely on the benefits in order to be useful, okay, because what's her name, Kurt? Jennifer was afraid of making too much money because they would take her benefits away, and she was off the books. Okay, and what I was trying to give her in a message is, you don't have to be afraid of losing your benefits if you find a way to work, because you'll be making much more money. And there were people here that were saying the same thing that I was. You can't hear that until it's put in front of you and say, this is how we can help you. So when you do in the next few months, present whatever you're going to present. Okay. Hopefully there will be a message that will be listened to, and the fear will not be there of losing some benefits, that there are milestones that can open up for you and you can work. And in that way, you can be like everybody else. Okay. And what you will earn and how you will feel about yourself will be so much more satisfying than picking up that check. Okay. And the rights are still there for you to get that check. Okay. Because you know what, on my Social Security, I don't know where Larry is on that right now, and I don't need to know. But on my check, if I make over a certain amount of money, whether it's non-taxable or taxable, they're going to take $1 off of that. Well, why am I scared? I should not be. I'm earning hundreds of thousands of dollars more. You know, keep the Social Security, save it for when I'm too old, and I can rest on my, and I can rest. And then maybe I'll take it back. But in this country, I'm taking from my father's generation. There is nobody going to be taking from my generation, because it won't be there anymore, because we don't have the taxable income and the taxes to go there. So it's kind of a, I don't know the term in my head right now, when we're kind of at 2:02 in the afternoon here. We have to overcome the fear that we can lose something if somebody offers us an honest to goodness advantage and a way to improve our lives. We should not be afraid. We should move on and do it. On LinkedIn today, a woman who made herself into who she is now said the way that you can learn and improve your life and yourself is to have something taken away from you and not be afraid that you're a loser, because something will open up. You may have to work hard. You may have to go through some difficult times, but the times after that will be good. And she is totally correct, 110%. So with that in mind, I hope that answers the question. I don't know where you and Emily want to go with this, but you seem to have another young lady coming on board. And I think she's going to want to say something. And if it's after 2, I need to go. But that's it for me, Kurt. But I want to know if these presentations, if they're going to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, if they're going to be on your podcast. I'd like to know, because I like to watch these presentations.
Okay, yeah, that's a developing situation. For sure is going to be on my Captain Kirk account with the HMP, you know, provided to me with my work being a captain. And so if you don't have that link, we can get that to you. Emily can follow up so you have that. We can have you connect with that just like you do with this. And you can, if the time works out for you, you can hear the presentation directly. Otherwise, I'm going to be recording it and you'll be able to have it distributed to you if you want to opt into that. If you miss the event, well, either way, even if you come to the event, you can still have the video.
Either one can have the video. Yeah. So, okay, that's where I'm coming from. So somebody probably is brilliant and more brilliant than I am, is now waiting in the wings to be seen and heard. And I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, so really this is kind of a follow-up one-to-one turned into a powerful podcast presentation. So Sean was, you know, hosting me on her Zoom. I still actually have it up on my other device over here, but she switched over because she heard Marc Morrison and Larry Lall were on. She doesn't know you, but you sound kind of cool. So she came on.
Hello, it's nice to virtually meet everyone. I'm always up for meeting new empowered people. So,
all right. So what we're going to do is this makes for interesting timing. So we're going to take a few minutes to splice in Sean here and just learn something exciting. I don't know if that's what you're going to want to share, Sean, but you told me about the great success that's keeping you busy. If you want to share that's great. It helps our show. If there's reasons you'd rather.
no.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
Share the news.
So I'm Sean Satterfield. I'm the founder of Shine Music. Our purpose is making live music accessible for all. because fundamentally live music or music in general has nothing to do with our outer shell. I like to say that it is the language of our soul. And we, after it being postponed from 2020, were able to have the very first fully accessible music festival on August 8th here in Denver. And we had technology that allowed deaf people to experience music. We had Braille maps and just a lot of, what was really amazing about it is there was no ADA section. So we had everybody of every ability on the dance floor together. It was 11 bands and 2 stages, and it was free, because 70% of people with disabilities are unemployed, and it's not because they're not capable of working. But when I said I wanted to remove all barriers that would prevent people from experiencing in that magic bubble that happens when the energy from the crowd and the energy from the stage combine, I meant all barriers. And financial, especially after 2020, I think we all kind of needed some live music in our lives. So, and what Kurt was talking about was, unfortunately, I'm sure you probably have heard about the fires that took nearly 1,000 homes last week here in Denver, and I had friends who unfortunately lost everything, and it happened so fast that people weren't able to get things out, and unfortunately that included their pets. And so there were some people who, when they found out about the Shine Music Festival, they donated their time and their talents, and some of those people lost their homes and everything. So it was my opportunity to give back. I made a post saying, hey, here's some things that they need, because they literally had just the clothes on their back, and the response was so overwhelming that we need to rent a U-Haul. So that's where I was kind of coming in, of like just getting my head, wrapped around a conversation from kind of going back and forth all day. So it's nice to have some communication and just settle my brain a little bit.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining and obliging us with our scheduled time and shifting our activity here. To catch this end of our show here. So what we're going to do, we haven't done it for a while, Emily, but I'm going to invoke the split. And so what the split means, folks, is that we kind of crammed into this conclusion. So with our work with Transform You Media Network and our syndicated show, we are kind of at that hour slot. But I do want to keep our live streaming going so that we can more naturally conclude this here. Larry and Mark, I don't know what kind of time you set aside for sure. If you got to get moving on, this is the end of our scheduled time. But and anything else you want to share with Sean before we end?
Well, it was nice to meet you, Sean, even though it was very short, but very sweet. Thank you very much. Hope we'll chat again soon.
Yeah.
You're on mute, by the way, Sean.
You're on mute. Unmute yourself.
You'd think I'd have that figured out by now. Thank you for letting me barge into your meeting. It was a pleasure having the opportunity to just introduce myself and Shine Music. So I appreciate it.
So very nice. I hope I didn't embarrass you anyway. It was more like bragging about you than actually.
Yep. No, I'm not really a person easily embarrassed. So, yeah. So no, I appreciate it, and I'm really excited to actually learn more about all that you guys do. And I've just met some really amazing people in the last few weeks, and I'm really excited about where those connections are going to lead to. Because fundamentally, that's what it's all about, right? Communication is education.
I told this to Kurt, Sean, and not that I'm saying it to him, now I'm saying it to you. I told Kurt, with all of his hard work and all of his talent and his brilliance and what he does, and he will shake his head and smile, but I told him, never get institutionalized, because all of that will be gone. And he's shaking his head, yes. I'm going to say the same thing to you, because all Larry and I do is give our opinions, and whatever we can give. I think I will be kept up to date with the presentations and any efforts. So all Kurt has to do is reach out. Otherwise, I'm not going to sit on him to do it. But I think I think he will let me know if he needs anything. So I will tell you the same thing. Never get institutionalized. Don't let them hook you in with millions and millions of dollars, because it does not exist.
Right.
Okay, it does not exist anymore. It's not here. In Canada, it exists, not here in the United States. It's a totally different animal. So, all right.
Mark, I'll sit on Kurt for you.
Ooh.
Is that a
Okay,
Roskopf
okay,
moment?
we're still live
Yes.
streaming, folks. Just remember that.
Hey, Kurt, you are in trouble, and I'm going to leave right now before he starts to hate me for getting Emily all mad at him. I'll see you guys around.
All
It was
right.
nice
Thanks,
meeting
Mark.
you.
Nice
Bye.
meeting
Bye.
you guys. Take care.
Bye.
All the best.
You too, Larry.
Stay safe. Bye.
You too.
Bye. All right. So we're going to say goodbye to our Transform You Media audience, and with the help they provide to keep this carrying on forever with the World Ability Podcast Network, a collaborative production. Again, my name is Kurt Roskopf. I'm an ambassador with the Disability Channel. Folks can feel free to email me anytime, Kurt, K-U-R-T, at thedisabilitychannel.us, and give me those calls and send me your texts. 262-372-1SKI. That's 262-372-1754. And with that, we're going to make that our